everyone. Thank you for coming. We're just waiting on a few more people to get here, and then we'll be starting. So we should be starting by 9:30 as opposed to 9 o'clock. So for those who are tuned into the live, just hold on a little bit. We'll be starting as soon as the rest of the attendants who are coming in person are here. So just a few more minutes, and then we'll be starting at 9:30. Thank you. and a very special good morning as well to everyone that's joining in live through our Facebook page. My name is Rugari Shalom Zimunya, and I work with For Equality. And thank you so much for coming out today. I really think that it's important that we have these dialogues, critical dialogues. They shape advocacy, they shape programming, they shape our interventions as young people. And so it's so nice to see lots of young women in the room. So nice to see lots of young people in the room today. And I'm really looking forward to see what today has in store for us. And so as you all know, we're here today to really dialogue on generation equality. We know that earlier this year, there have been two gatherings, two generation equality forums, one that happened in Mexico and the other one that happened in Paris recently in June. And so what really came out of these two meetings were commitments that different countries made, and Malawi was no exception. Malawi also committed to a couple of things, and so I think it's important as young people to really know what are these commitments and what do they mean for us? Are they feasible? If so, how exactly do we see them playing out? But without further ado, we'll get into all of that later. I would like to call upon Singa Chilemba, who is our board member, to come forward and give us some welcome remarks. So Singa.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to take off my mask so I can speak clearly. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it is my honor and privilege to welcome you all here today on behalf of the For Equality Board and Management team. We are grateful you could join us this morning for this particular She Talks event to explore generation equality through intergenerational dialogue. While I believe For Equality requires no introduction in this space, I would like to take a moment to highlight the work that we have been doing in strengthening the individual and collective agency of African women to dismantle systems of oppression and attain gender equality. The For Equality team has successfully delivered projects in campaigns against gender-based violence, working with women farmers to link them to markets and financing opportunities, the mentorship of girls in secondary schools, as well as hosting several She Talks events such as this, to encourage dialogue around key issues affecting young African women and girls. The She Talks platform has been a safe space for exploring, discussing, and developing solutions since January 2019. It has since grown to the platform that it is today and continues to bring to the table real and impactful conversations that change the lives of women and girls. Today's dialogue is no exception. Most of us here today already know the magnitude of gender inequalities in our country as well as the continent. It is time that we design innovative solutions to bring change. In recognition of the importance of partnerships in these spaces, I would also like to acknowledge NALA Feminist Collective for supporting with the organizing of this event. They are a collective of feminists that are fostering, enabling, and mobilizing young women from Africa and the diaspora to bridge the gap between policy and implementation, intergovernmental, grassroots, and generational spaces. I cannot stress enough just how valuable and paramount feminist leadership is to changing the course of gender equality in Africa and specifically in Malawi. I would therefore like to acknowledge the great work that Nala Feminist Collective is doing in supporting countries to create accountability mechanisms for the commitments from the Generation Equality Forum 2021. I would also like to recognize Mr. Joseph Kalelo Piri from the Ministry of Gender. We hope that he will be here with us today, and as the ministry directly in line with the commitments, his availability today will allow us to understand the commitments better, as well as the role that we each can play. Lastly, I wish to acknowledge UN Women and Care International. You have been a key part of this process in formulating these commitments with the Malawi government. We thank them for being here today. So we have gathered here for one main objective, and the objective of the dialogue this morning is to empower young African women towards the achievements of the Action Coalition's commitments, guided by the Africa Young Women Beijing 25 Manifesto. We hope to do this firstly by fostering intergenerational leadership to bridge the generational gap with a focus on greater inclusion of young women in decision making. Secondly, by enabling the capacity and expertise of young women to bridge the gap between policy and implementation. And lastly, through mobilizing for youth-led accountability on the Action Coalition's commitments and manifesto to bridge the intergovernmental and grassroots spaces. Intergenerational dialogue is important in the work of achieving equal rights for women, because as each generation of young women rises up to the challenge, we realize we can't do it alone. The path has been laid by those who came before us, and as the mantle is passed from generation to generation, there is a need to overcome our perceived differences in perspective to focus on our shared goal, which is the liberation of all women. There is a wealth of knowledge that we can learn from each other through platforms such as these, when we acknowledge that it is our collective effort that will drive meaningful change. Finally, I want to highlight the importance of feminist movement building, because while we can achieve some success as individuals, real impact lies in working together to achieve our common goals. To quote one of my favorite authors and feminist activist, Audre Lorde, "I am not free while any woman is unfree, even when her shackles are very different from my own." Thank you all very much for coming, and I hope you enjoy the dialogue.
Thank you so much to our board member, Singalilo Chilemba, for those remarks. And so as we're moving on with the program, for those of us who would like to tweet, who would like to post this on Facebook, today we're using the hashtag #SheTalksIGD, which is Intergenerational Dialogue, which is what we're here for today. So again, #SheTalksIGD, and please feel free to tag NalaFEM as well, because without them, this event today would not have been possible. So #SheTalksIGD and tag NalaFEM. Thank you so much for those remarks once again, Singa. And so as we're moving on with the program, we all know that in 1995, there was a huge gathering, a huge convening of different world leaders and gender equality activists from around the globe in Beijing in 1995. And at this meeting, different commitments were made by different countries. And so what was agreed upon in Beijing in 1995 has pretty much shaped what gender equality activism has looked like in Africa and in many other parts of the world as well. And in Malawi, we also had people that were part of this conference representing Malawi and standing up for Malawi and, making these commitments on behalf of Malawi. And that has shaped quite a number of things in the way that the course of gender equality activism has been in Malawi. And so I think it's important, before we jump into the generation equality commitments, that we begin to look at, have things been any different since 1995? Is there any policy influencing that has gone on because of the conference that happened in 1995? And in what ways has Malawi changed, and in what ways is Malawi any different? And so to walk us through this report is a young woman. Her name is Elina, and she's from Her Liberty. So she's just going to give general overview of what we're looking like now as Malawi, coming from 1995, fast forward to 2021, and the renewal of these commitments. And then thereafter, we're going to have Ondinda from UN Women just to walk us through an overview of generation equality, before we have the ministry, Joseph, here today to walk us through the commitments that Malawi has made. And so, Elina, I would like to invite you to come forward and tell us a little bit more about where is Malawi now since 1995. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Shalom. Okay, so coming from Her Liberty, just a very quick background. Her Liberty is a youth-led organization. So we aim to empower and equip young people to be agents of change in their communities. So we keep talking about the 1995, 25 years ago, how head of states made in Beijing and made commitments towards equality for women and girls. This really provided a roadmap to empower women and girls in Malawi. There were quite a number of key areas that were looked at out of the 12 critical areas. So looking at poverty alleviation, the girl child, violence against women, and peace. Uh, there have been great strides in terms of achieving gender equality in Malawi. We first were looking at the reformed gender-related laws. We're looking at the Gender Equality Act of 2013, and as well as we're also looking at the prevention of domestic violence. And there's also been awareness and multi-sectoral approach towards gender equality. We have seen different organizations working on different approaches. We have also seen that we can't really achieve gender equality if there isn't inclusiveness of male in our programming. There's also been government partnership with NGOs. We also look at the development of the policy involved different NGOs during the preparation, the planning, as well as the implementation. That kind of also cements the efforts that governments want to achieve and kind of helps us to work in a unified way. There's also been the mainstreaming of gender in developmental activities. I think we also working about the 50-50 campaign, and right now, I believe we come from different institutions, and we always make sure that there's female representations in our programmings. There's also been the promotion and protection of human rights for women. So much, I think it's really beautiful that nowadays we get to talk about gender equality. For the fact alone that we can sit down and talk about gender equality, I think that's a progress compared to many years back. So this promotion we have also seen through the establishment of human rights institutions such as the Malawi Human Rights Commission that promote and investigate violence of human rights, violation of human rights, including that of women. So we are also looking at the generational equality, as Sharon kept mentioning. So this is Generation Equality is an international platform that seeks to accelerate the implementation of the gender equality. So this year in June up to early July, head of states met again to revise the commitments towards gender equality. There was a task force guided by UN Women that also championed that the development and the review of the commitments. So Her Liberty also working on gender equality project. It's not, we're gonna launch it, it's called It Starts With Me. Basically, we're going to collect stories of women in communities just to understand the gaps as well as the progress that has been made. And this will be compiled in form of a report, which we want to present to the president of Malawi. And then moving forward, yes, we're talking about the strides that have been made, but still more there are gaps. So we are looking at increasing young women's representation and participation in key decision making. Yes, we currently had a very great successful story of Martha Chizuma, but I think this was really amazing. But by the end of the day, we want to achieve gender equality in a way that when we talk about women in public position, it should not be a welfare, it should be something that is normalized to see a woman in such positions. And then we're also looking at not just women, but if we're talking about sustainability, creating generational equality, we also want the young women to start taking up the leadership positions now. And then another gap, we're also looking at creating safe spaces for women. Yes, we are talking about women participating, but are they safe spaces? We look at issues of sexual violence, sexual harassment. Are women really empowered to take up these positions without facing barriers? These are something we still need to work on as a country. And then also awareness and empowerment, issues of gender equality, even generation equality itself. How many people in Malawi even know about generational equality? And even going to the grassroots, to the local communities, do women know about their rights to take up leadership positions, to contribute to decision making? I think with that said, we still have a lot of work to do as a country in terms of gender equality, even understanding itself for the gender equality. I was very fascinated that I'm very fascinated most times when we talk about feminists, we always get a negative vibe from people. Then we realize that even the definition itself has a lot of people getting it misunderstood, which also affects us in achieving gender equality. I think with that said, I'll end here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Elena, for walking us through what young people feel has happened since 1995. It was a very important conference, and so much happened that also informed the course of gender equality movements in Malawi, I would say. But I think it's also important then to see what are some of the gaps resulting from that, what went wrong, and what can we do differently with these new commitments. And so just to walk us through exactly what generation equality is about, just to dive a bit more in depth, I'd like to invite UN Women, Ondida. Am I pronouncing it right? Okay, I think maybe you can just introduce yourself as well when you come. So yes, UN Women, over to you. Thank you.
So allow me to pull off the mark. Good morning to everyone. Well, the official from Minister of Gender, Mr. Joseph Kalelo, in absentia, is here. Oh, okay. The board chairperson for equality, Mrs. Singalilwe Shilemba, the director of for equality, Mr. Wilson Shivanga. So I'm not, you are not the only one who has challenges pronouncing. CSO representatives here, ladies and gentlemen, young women and young men. I see a few men. It is a pleasure to join all of you today on behalf of UN Women representative, Ms. Clara Anyangwe, in this intergenerational dialogue on gender equality, on generation equality, which takes place roughly after a month of the landmark Generation Equality Forum, which took place in Paris recently. Generation equality, as we all know, there has been a lot of discussions, consultations, and also hearing of voices of all of you here, is a landmark global initiative driving commitments on gender equality and especially embedding them as a central component of building back better from COVID-19. Actually, we are still in the midst of it. We don't even know where we're going. So to fuel a significant and lasting change for generations to come. This is the most critical moment in a generation to invest in gender equality, halt rollbacks in rights, and accelerate momentum for women's safety, leadership, and economic opportunity. The Generation Equality Forum, as it was also said here, took place immediately after we gathered, women gathered, the world gathered to assess progress on Beijing, which took place 25 years ago, and the realization that 26 years, of course, too little had changed. And more than changing, there was also the realization that the regression on the gains in relation to the rights of women and girls and on gender equality in general continued to happen everywhere. Public rhetoric on gender equality has not been matched by action, financing, or implementation. Investment in gender equality remains essential to rebuilding, to building after different emergencies that we are facing, situations that we are facing, including COVID. We keep talking about rebuilding, but we are still, as I said, in the midst of it. We may have much, much more to rebuild. And with COVID also, there were rising reports of violence against women, as well as higher adverse economic impacts, both caused by increased unpaid care work responsibilities and the fact that women typically earn less and work in more insecure and informal jobs than men. Women make up 39% of global employment, but account for 54% of overall job losses due to COVID-19 crisis. And data is still being collected. It's likely to be worse than this. Government responses have been insufficient during the pandemic, which only a small fraction of social protection, labor market, and fiscal policies assessed as gender sensitive or gender responsive. Evidence abounds in relation to that. And I guess you, especially as young women, very curious, have much, much more to say in relation to this. You are also the ones generating this evidence. Gender equality is critical to the survival of the planet and rebuilding of more sustainable and thriving economies, societies, and political ecosystems. The action coalitions have been shared, blueprints for the actions we all view as critical to creating gender equal societies, as well as to rebuild the world post-COVID. Therefore, generation equality comes to emphasize the imperative of delivering concrete results in 6 thematic areas called Action Coalition. The Generation Equality Coalitions are the world's roadmap for gender equality, focus on systemic change by addressing structural inequalities. It was also mentioned by the board director when she was talking, by the young lady who came here before me. Seek transformation of structures, systems of power, both in terms of very concrete change and also in terms of overall ways of being and working. And when we are talking about structures, when we are talking about systems of power, I also link it to all the discussions about feminism that the previous speaker was talking about. These are also elements to be over and over demystified. What are we talking about? We know, all of those who are here know, but it has to be everywhere. In doing so, the action coalitions aim at building a collective vision through dynamic approach of co-creation, centering on dialogue and shared perspective. Youth voices and leadership are critical to the transformative vision of Generation Equality Action Coalition. This is why we are here. The action coalitions are global, are innovative, multi-stakeholder partnerships, which are mobilizing governments, civil society, organizations, women's movements, international organizations, and the private sector. And here they are involving young women, the young generations, throughout, be it within government, civil society, international organizations of private sector. The engagement of young people is crucial. They are aimed at catalyzing collective action, spark global and local conversations among generations. We are here. I'm 54. Well, most of you here, maybe half of that. And we are talking. This is what it is all about. Drive increased public and private investment. Deliver concrete and game-changing results. Really game-changing results. Bold results. We are talking about innovation, but we are also talking of go beyond the boundaries, go beyond what we know, go beyond what we have done so far. What is it that we haven't yet done? Let's explore that. And who better than young people to bring that? Based on human rights principles and through a data-driven process of consultations with international feminist groups, grassroots activists, organizations, including of young women, governments and other partners, the selected themes for generation equality actions are, no surprise, gender-based violence, economic and justice rights, bodily autonomy and sexual and reproductive health and rights. Please take note of rights, always being challenging, everywhere, every gathering of the women movement, with governments, with international organizations like CSWs and others, sexual and reproductive rights of women are always in the turmoil of the discussions. Technology and innovation for gender equality. I see a lot of, and that's fantastic. Feminist action for climate justice. We are at a stage where we cannot but look at what is happening to our climate, to our dear Earth. Either we take action now with a feminist approach, or we will all lose it. Feminist Movements and Leadership, and here Malawi is a leader of this action coalition, together with Canada and Netherlands. In addition, a compact on women, peace and security and humanitarian action is in place to drive actions and resources. Women always absent from peace talks everywhere, while evidence abounds indicating that when women participate, when their voices are heard, peace is always long-lasting. But we are continuously put aside. So that's why women, peace and security comes also at stake when it comes to generation equality. The whole objective, accelerating a transformative agenda of a generational change. And this has to be done taking into account the following issues so that results are really achieved in a concrete, tangible way. Financing, transforming gender norms, including by engaging men and boys, but also by challenging the norms, by challenging what we know about the place for women and men, what women should be, what men should be, and all the discussions that we have been having. We need to challenge that over and over everywhere. Law and police reform, education, gender data and accountability, and addressing intersectional discrimination against women with disability, race-related, sex orientation related, or gender identity related. It all makes a point when it comes to addressing gender equality and in the context of a generation equality. There has been events which have galvanized generation equality. They have been mentioned here. Mexico in this year, and then Paris, which we have mentioned. And through these forums, it has been mostly about which commitments are essential to accelerate investment and implementation of action coalitions to propel progress on gender equality. For instance, through Paris Forum, there has been the launch of a 5-year action plan journey, the Global Acceleration Plan, up to 2026, to achieve irreversible progress towards gender equality, founded on a series of concrete, ambitious, and transformative actions, including a $40 billion US dollars in financial commitments by governments, by private sector, by international organizations everywhere. The Global Acceleration Plan includes a rationale for why the themes were selected, a focused set of concrete actions that will unite diverse efforts and deliver game-changing results, design principles, a catalog of commitments that governments, corporations, and civil society partners must undertake to accelerate progress, an accountability framework, and annual success goalposts which highlight how actions will be measured and assessed, and general principles on how results will be reported. These two are critical. We need to sit more regularly and say, where are we? And on agreed upon indicators, so that progress really happen. We do not need to wait to celebrate 5 years of Beijing, 10 years of Beijing. Of course, we have CSW where we do it, but we need to do it more fiercely. In terms of next steps, action, action, action. Accountability and reporting using existing platforms such as CSW. Every year we are there. Action, action, and more action to ensure transformative change. And this is why 4Generation brought us here today. And we as UN Women are also here to support throughout. We look forward to an empowering dialogue today and continued bold actions, ones commensurate with the magnitude of the gender equality challenges which are there and continue to emerge. We need to be always one step ahead of those challenges. And also commensurate with the magnitude of what is yet to be done for gender equality to be achieved by 2030. We only have 9 years to go. Thank you very much. By the way, I'm Ondina da Barca Vieira.
Thank you very much, Ondina. And thank you for walking us through what exactly generation equality is. As for equality, we've been going around different communities, meeting young people in colleges and communities in the southern region, but also in the central region of Malawi. And I think one theme that's cutting across is young people are saying, like you said, action, action, action. We want to see this action going on. What exactly does it mean that Malawi committed to this? What actions are going to be followed up, and how can young people be a part of it? And I also liked how you mentioned the aspect of accountability, because I think oftentimes with commitments or things that we follow, we're not really sure how we're being accountable for them and what monitoring mechanisms exist, and how can young people be in the loop on what's going on, and how can they be part of the discourse as well. So thank you so much for highlighting that. And so as we're moving on with the program, just to walk us through, she mentioned the 6 action coalitions that different world leaders were signing to at the Generation Equality Forum this year. And Malawi also made a commitment. Malawi also made commitments. And so I would like to call upon Mr. Joseph Kalelo-Piri from the Ministry of Gender, Community Development and Social Welfare. He is going to walk us through what commitments Malawi made. And so, Mr. Joseph Kalelo-Piri, over to you.
Good morning. I have a presentation, so I hope you'll be able to follow as I walk through the presentation. But to say that I'm Joseph from the Ministry of Gender. Basically, my role within the Ministry of Gender, sitting in the Gender Affairs Department, I'm the National Coordinator for Gender-Based Violence Programs in Malawi. But it's my pleasure to be part of this meeting because it's my first time. So most of the faces here are quite new. And the language and the dialogue as well, although I'm part of the gender conversation, but it's my first time as well. So it's my pleasure to be part of this platform. Let me recognize the board chair for equality, Ms. Chiremba, the representative, UN Women, moderator, the director for equality, and all of us seated in here. I'm going to present to you the commitments that Malawi has made, building up on what my colleagues have presented. Enough background has been given in terms of what For Equality is about. But Malawi is providing leadership on 2 action coalitions or thematic areas. Now, these are important areas for us as a country, and as a ministry, these are areas that we, on behalf of the government of Malawi, we are committed to ensuring that concrete actions have been taken as we strive to achieve and attain gender equality. So enough has been talked about generational equality, that it is an international platform that seeks to accelerate the implementation of gender equality commitments in the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action of 1995, as it has already been said. And this is basically in order that we achieve transformative change, because we understand if we continue doing business as usual, nothing is going to come without radical actions. Unless we take aggressive steps, that is the only way that we can achieve gender equality, even for Malawi as a country. So they just concluded Generation Equality Forum in Paris, as the UN Women representative and other speakers before me have already said, announced board commitments that we are supposed to take as member states and as stakeholders together. And Malawi joins the rest of the world in generation equality journey through the 6 thematic areas. Now, these are the 6 thematic areas, just to go through as well. That one is talking about gender-based violence, and I'm glad because, as I said, this is my passion. This is where I lead most of the actions around gender-based violence in the country. But also there are issues of economic justice and rights, bodily autonomy and sexual and reproductive health rights, feminist action for climate change, technology and innovations for gender equality, and feminist movements and leadership. Now, in terms of leadership, what Malawi is, where Malawi is coming in really, Malawi is co-leading the Feminist Movements and Leadership Action Coalition alongside Canada and Netherlands as member states, together with other stakeholders, which includes CSOs and private sector entities. Now, as a co-leader of the coalition on feminist movements and leadership, Malawi renews its commitment to promote feminist movements building and women's leadership at all levels. So as we say, as we're saying at all levels, it must be at all levels, because we understand as a country, most of our population is rural-based. Now, I was so pleased to hear about the efforts that For Equality is making in making sure that even girls, young women at the local levels are aware of the movement. That is very important, because it is not just us in here, but we need to take down this to all to everyone in the spirit of leaving no one behind. And additionally, in collaboration with CARE International as a key CSO under Economic Justice and Rights Action Coalition, Malawi will leverage the Generation Equality platform to commit to advancing women's economic empowerment through guaranteeing economic justice and rights for women and girls. We understand how significant this is, the economic empowerment of women. Now, what are these commitments that we are making under the thematic areas in which Malawi is leading? So first of all, on feminist movements and leadership, basically this feminist movements and leadership promotes the resourcing, investing, strengthening and enabling of feminist leadership, women's rights and feminist movements in their diversity to scale and sustain collective action for gender equality, social justice, and human rights. So it accelerates transformative feminist leadership that is inclusive in all aspects of decision-making, creates spaces for new emerging feminist movements, and enables young feminists as drivers of inclusive change. So this is very important indeed for us. Now, in advancing this, the commitment in advancing this, the feminist movements and leadership thematic area, the government of Malawi is making the following commitments. Number one is to fund and support diverse feminist activists, organizations, funds, and movements. Now, what we are saying there is that as a government, we commit to undertake, we commit to allocate adequate resources to national gender equality mechanisms, especially for feminist movements, women's rights, and women and youth-led grassroots organizations, including informal groups to advance gender equality. So we understand the young women and all the feminist movements must be well-resourced for us to drive the gender equality agenda. So as a country, as a nation, as government, we are making a commitment to ensure that we provide adequate resources towards this noble cause. And secondly, under the same, in order to drive the feminist movements and leadership agenda, as government, we commit to promote, expand, and protect civic space for feminist action, organizing, and mobilization. So we, as government, we are committed to ensuring that, to supporting feminist movements that promote active participation of women and girls, boys and girls, boys and men, and to advance gender equality, to advance gender equality, peace, and human rights by creating and sustaining a conducive environment to them to carry out their work in advancing gender equality. And most important there, because we were not just talking about women and young girls, but also we are talking about the engagement of men and boys. And glad to hear that, to say that with support from UN Women, we have been doing quite a lot of initiatives around developing the male engagement strategy, which will soon be validated. And we believe this is an important piece because it details what actions we need to take as a country, as a government, together with all of us seated in here and all stakeholders outside there, to ensure that men and boys are part of this conversation. That is the only way that we can make a difference, not just women and girls alone, but everyone, especially men and boys, also must be part of the conversation. And thirdly, we to advance and increase meaningful participation, leadership, and decision-making, making power of women, girls, and non-binary people in all their diversity. So as government, we are committed, number one, to fully comply with and implement the 60-40 quota in public appointments, recruitment, and tertiary education enrollment in accordance with the sections 11 and 16 of the Gender Equality Act. I liked the young woman who spoke earlier about the advances that we have made as a country over the years since 1995. The enactment of the gender equality is one major milestone that we have made. And not just the gender equality alone, but I think we have created a conducive environment in terms of ensuring the legal framework that is progressive. So a lot of work has been done, and the Gender Equality Act, which I just mentioned here, which talks about the 40-60 representation, we are committed to ensuring that we abide by what it dictates us as a government to do. But also we commit to undertake a legislative quota of 50% to attain equal representation of women in elected positions. And I think in the next sitting of Parliament, there are a number of bills, electoral reform bills, that are going to be presented in Parliament. Most of these are hinging on increasing the representation of women in political positions, so to say, be it as members of Parliament and as councillors. Now, the other pillar on the other thematic area on economic justice and rights. So this is another pillar that we are providing leadership. Now, as we talked about. Now, this pillar basically, in brief, economic justice and rights refer to how economic and political systems are designed and how their benefits or costs are distributed, and how institutions are held accountable for the economic outcomes they generate. This theme encompasses the full spectrum of paid and unpaid labor, including informal labor, and encompasses sub-themes such as time poverty, social protection, financial inclusion, and wage inequity. It addresses macro and microeconomic factors, such as how the economic system reinforces gender inequality and how women's work is considered unproductive, and how women and girls often lack economic opportunities. And I think we have a lot of work to do as a country in this regard. For example, achieving economic autonomy of not just women, but also girls in our own country, because talk about poverty in Malawi, we always say poverty has a feminine face. There are a lot of vulnerabilities that our young women, girls are facing because they are not economically independent. So this is a very important area for us as a country to focus our energies on as well. So in ensuring economic justice and rights as guaranteed for women and girls in all their diversity, including for adolescent girls, as for men and boys, the government of Malawi is committing itself to undertake the following. Number one, to increase women's economic empowerment by transforming the care economy. So the government is committing itself to adopt policies and implement programs aimed at reducing and redistributing the unpaid care work through adopting a paternity leave policy and adopting a policy that will make care work visible and accessible. And I think the opportunity that we have now is that we have had a strategy for economic empowerment of women in the country, which outlined the activities or the thematic areas that we need to focus on as a country if you are to talk about economic empowerment of women. This strategy has been under implementation for the past 5 years, and it is coming to an end this year. And my colleague Fred who was supposed to be with us as well in this meeting, is facilitating the review of that strategy to appreciate what have we done as a country in empowering women, in ensuring the economic empowerment of women. Now, as we are talking about increasing women's economic empowerment by transforming the care economy, I believe this one, the focus on this area provides an important opportunity for us to even review, for example, this strategy, because it is a blueprint that we've been using as a country. To what extent does it integrate these issues that are appearing under this priority area? So it will be important that even this team that is seated in here, we take interest to find out if we were to make progress in terms of economic empowerment of women, what issues should we be focusing on as we develop the successor strategy for economic empowerment of women in the country. Secondly, as government, we are committed to expanding decent work and employment in formal and informal economies. So as a government, we are committing to close the gender gap in public procurement through adoption of a 30% quota for women and women-owned business in Procurement Act. We understand a lot of issues in the procurement sector, and it is only when women are also taking part that we can see substantive empowerment taking its course. And thirdly, as a government, we are committed to increasing women's access to and control over productive resources. A very huge commitment that we are making. We are committed to facilitating access to markets for over 25,000 women in cooperatives, informal groups, and as women-owned businesses or enterprises. And also, we are committed to establishing a dedicated Women's Economic Empowerment Fund to ensure women at all levels, including in informal groups, have access to affordable loans. I need to admit that we have been talking about establishment of the Economic Empowerment Fund, which is really a game changer when it comes to the empowerment of women. And this is one area that we need to work together as stakeholders to advocate and to lobby for, of course, as government, but also we have other government institutions that are responsible for the national cake that need to be, to which we need to mount strong advocacy to lobby for the establishment of, to make sure that this is operationalized, the Women's Economic Empowerment Fund. It has been a song that we've been singing for the past few years, and we are committed to making sure that this happens, but it can only happen if this conversation is taken, reaches out to all the levels to which it is supposed to reach, and so that for necessary action taking. And fourthly, we are committed to promoting gender transformative economies and fiscal stimulus. And in this case, we are committing ourselves to increasing investments in gender responsive infrastructure, public services that will contribute to reduction of maternal mortality rate by, among other things, constructing 900 health facilities or health centers, each with a maternity unit to service 100,000 women. We understand how serious and glaring inequalities in issues of maternal health are. We are also committing ourselves to mobilizing enough resources towards the social protection schemes that integrate women's land rights, digital financial services, and participation in informal and informal economic and socio-economic platforms. We understand how the issues of land ownership in Malawi, but as well as participation of women in the financial sector is. That not many women as compared to men are empowered enough to talk about issues of land ownership, which is one of the most important assets that we have as a country and opens up opportunities for so many things, for example, if you own land as a person. So in conclusion, what are we saying as government? We are saying lack of financing is widely understood to be a major reason for slow progress in advancing gender equality and enacting the women's rights agenda of the milestones of the 1995 Beijing conference. So in the gender equality, in the generation equality, we are calling upon all stakeholders engaged in gender issues, So when all stakeholders means all, let's not leave anyone behind. From the grassroots up to this level, let's make sure that everyone is involved and is part of the discussion, part of the discourse and conversation to ensure that we achieve equality. So we are saying all stakeholders engaged in gender issues to be the integral part of the commitment through financial resources, policy and program commitments, human resource and technical expertise to advance gender equality. But also the commitments that have been made by the government are on behalf of all of us here. As a government, we are only providing leadership. So whether it's us, CSOs, the public sector organizations, the private sector, the philanthropy, and all of us, including the UN entities at international and regional levels, we must all demonstrate commitment to work and to support government to ensure that this is implemented. It will require that where it means holding us accountable, we are held to account. And where we also need to hold you accountable, we hold each other accountable. That is the only way that we can make progress and ensure that these commitments that we have made together as a nation and as stakeholders are implemented and that are attained. With this, I should thank you all for your attention and state that indeed, if we work together, with our efforts coordinated, we will make a difference and we will achieve these commitments. I thank you so much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joseph, for walking us through the commitments that Malawi has made. I think for those of us maybe who had only heard about, the fact that Malawi committed, now we've had a chance to really dive in and understand what exactly are these commitments and what are the specific actions under each of the commitments. And I liked how you mentioned that it's not the role of the government alone to make sure that this is done by 2025. It's on all of 2026, sorry, it's on all of us as CSOs, as individuals, as grassroots-led feminist organizations. So we all have a role to play in regards to this. And I think that's why I'm so excited for the last activity that we're going to do today, which is going to be on an action plan development to say, now that we understand what the commitments are, and now that we've had this dialogue, what are we going to do? What do we expect from the government? What do we expect from CSOs? What do we expect from young feminist women who are leading change in their communities? But for now, we are going to take a break. I know the program had said we'll take a break after the dialogue, but we're going to take a break. I can see some hungry faces, so don't worry. We'll eat and have some coffee, and then we'll come back. So just a 10-minute break. So 10:35, we'll reconvene. And we're also just going to rearrange the chairs so that we have a nice open plan sitting for us to really talk to one another nicely. So teas and coffees at the back. There's some snacks as well. And for those who are joining us online, we will be back in about 10 minutes. So grab a cup of coffee as well from wherever you are, and we'll see you at 10:35. Thank you. And so now we're back from break. Welcome back, everyone that's here today at Warm Heart. And welcome to everybody that's joining in live from our Facebook page as well as Nala Feminist Collective's Facebook page. And so, as we said before the break, we're going to be diving into a bit of a dialogue. And so we have our panelists here today, but we also have people who are attending in person who will also be part of this discussion and also contribute. So whether you're watching on Facebook or you're here in person, feel free to also feed into the conversation. We have somebody checking the Facebook comments. So if you're making any comments, if you're contributing to the discussion, we will be able to see and we'll bring the questions forward here. And so without further ado, I would love to welcome our panelists here today and ask you to just introduce yourself so we can start from here and move on.
Okay. Okay. My name is Jessica Mandanda. I'm gender and communication specialist. I'm a gender and communication specialist. I am a very radical feminist, and I'm excited to be here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tadala Tizimba. I am a global advocacy intern at Intergenerational, but I'm also a member of a feminist organization called Pepeta, Malawi. I am a feminist, and I am also glad to be here.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Zilani Gondwe, and I am a very passionate feminist and a conservationist. If you'd like, you can call me an ecofeminist. I am the director of the Institute for the Conservation of Nature, which looks at the gender-specific issues, among other issues, affecting issues of climate change, conservation, and the environment in Malawi, the region, and globally. I am also the co-founder of a feminist collective that looks at self-care and issues of safe spaces and dialogue for the nurturing of feminists and their organizations called Feminati. And it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Awesome. Thank you for being here and being available for this. And I'm so excited to hear what's going to come out of, the three bright minds that we have here and also everybody that's here present today. And so just to start us off, we know that over the years, women have played different roles, especially here in Malawi, in regards to the fight for gender equality. So I'm interested to know what has been the particular role of women. Do we think that women have been a part of, everything that's been going on in regards to gender equality or fighting for gender equalities in Malawi? Or what's our take? What do we think has been the role of women in advancing gender equality in Malawi? We'll start with Jessica, move to Tadala, and then finish off with Zilani.
I think the role of women in the movement for gender equality has the only reason why we have the movement for gender equality is because of women in the first place. And I think that is what I can say has been the role of women. Without women, would have never had this conversation at all. I think throughout history, when it comes to major change that has happened in regards to development of any country, has been because of women. When we look at developments, when we look at different peace treaties for different countries, for example, what happened in Liberia, it was because of the women that they came to that to that peaceful end. It was because the women pushed for it so hard. When we look at even in Malawi, when we look at our fight for independence, without the women pushing for that, we would have never gotten to the point where we were. For democracy as well, for Malawi to get democracy, if you look at our history properly, not the history that we learn at school, but the actual history of this country, if it wasn't for the women's movements pushing for democracy, we would have never had that either. Same for the different ministries, the Ministry of Gender would have never had ministries of gender anywhere in the world if it wasn't for women pushing for that to happen. So the entire movement for gender equality exists because of women. So I think for me, that's the role that women have played.
I agree totally with Jessica because to pinpoint, it's very difficult to pinpoint a particular role when women themselves have been the mechanism, so to speak. They mobilize, they petition, they fight for things all the way from the suffragette movement and coming down to African feminism. Women are the movement itself. So I think there is no particular role. We are the movement.
I like what Tadala said about how women are the movement. We are not looking to create a new movement. We already exist. All we need to do is to amplify that. We need to increase the visibility, the pressure. And so in answering your question, Shalom, quite honestly, I'll even take it back a little wider and be simple and very specific. There is no movement, no revolution, no change that a people, a grouping of any kind, can expect to get if they, the victims, the ones who need it, do not ask for it, do not push for it. You would not expect men to fight for women. How do the oppressor fight for you? You cannot expect the oppressor to fight for you. It's against their interests. So, of course, women have led the charge for so long and for so many other things that are not even gender specific. But whenever women are involved in the processes of change, as Jessica said, then it happens. Because we are not only just the movement, we are the numbers. We exist in majority. We exist as the function of humanity, simply also because of our physiology. We are the procreators. So biologically, the power that we have is so much more and greater than we're often and so regularly given credit for. We really, honestly, are in charge. We just have lent our power out for such a long time, and we need to equalize that balance.
Thank you. So, Jessica, Tadala, and Zilani, we're saying women are the movement, and we're saying, Zilani, you said we just need to amplify that. So, one of the commitments that Malawi has made is committing to feminist movement and leadership. So, do we see this, or what's our take on that? And do we see this as being a good pathway to advancing gender equality in Malawi? So, I'd love to hear from Tadala, then Zilani, and then Jessica.
Okay, so I think having actual commitments on paper is important because then it because it's written down. I think now we are aware, or we're not forced. Government isn't forced to ignore feminist movements anymore. So we're there and we will be heard. So I think commitments are important because now they're creating space. They're calling for funding. So it now enables us to then practice or mobilize better. So yes.
Thank you, Tadala. Zilani?
As the oldest feminist here, my memory is getting bad, so you're going to have to repeat that question.
Okay, so I was just explaining how Malawi has committed to feminist movement and leadership. And so you spoke about amplifying the movements that exist in Malawi. And so I wanted to find out from you, do you think that feminist movement and leadership is a pathway to advancing gender equality in Malawi? In the case of Malawi, do you see this being useful? And if so, how?
Absolutely. Critical, necessary, invaluable, cannot happen without feminist movements. I like how the word feminism and its extrapolations have become synonymous with change and social justice in Malawi over the last few years. It hasn't been as overnight as some people might feel. It's been a very long process, but it's become synonymous with a better life for everybody. There are a lot of people, too many people, including women, who don't understand feminism. And I think we need to go a little bit back to the drawing board in educating and giving more awareness to people in general about what feminism actually is, instead of, because the bare bones of it is that it's good for everybody. And it's not for one particular group of people. It is for everybody across the entire gender spectrum. And once that is understood, then I think the acceptance of it can begin better. So we need those billboards to stop being about other things, but those billboards to define. We need civic education to define and to explain that this is for you, each of you, no matter your religion, your gender, your sexual identity, your age, your race. Feminism is for a better life for you. So yes, amplification begins with definition, and then we can move from there.
Thank you so much for that, Zilani. And so at this point, I just want to say for those tuning in through Facebook and on our live platforms, feel free to use the hashtag SheTalksIGD or hashtag NalaFEM or hashtag Generation Equality to be a part of this conversation on Twitter. And for those who are here in person, if you do have a comment, just raise your hand and I'll make sure to include you in this discussion. So Jessica, over to you.
I think I'd like to start from the point where our representative from the Ministry of Gender pointed out that Malawi made this commitment in 1995. That for me signifies that Malawi has known that we need feminism in order to achieve development, in order to go further as a country. I think in as much as we acknowledge it, we never actually implemented it. So now renewing this commitment gives that room to say, okay, we're renewing this commitment now globally, and now people are more aware of it, and that creates a platform for accountability. Where we can go back to the Ministry of Gender and the government to say, hey, you signed on to this. Why are we still having high rates of sexual violence in the country? Why is the representation of women in public office still less than 30%? Yet, we signed on to 60-40. What's happening there? We are able to interrogate all of these things. And I think another thing that is worth noting is that, like Zilani said, this is not something that has just come up now with the younger generation, or that now we're becoming more radical, that now feminism is here in Malawi. Feminism has been there in Malawi for such a long time. We have had women who have fought for this country for so long. We have women at grassroots level who are fighting for their rights and fighting for women all over the country. The movement for land rights, for example, that came from the grassroots level where they fought for it, and now it is in our law. Women now have access to owning land. I mean, we haven't exactly really done well on that, but it is in the law. Women fought for that. Feminists fought for that. So the fact that we're mentioning the word feminism now doesn't mean that it just came up overnight. It's been there. But it's a good thing now that government has acknowledged it, and now we're going to go further. But we're also going to be able to say you cannot arrest feminists, for example, just for fighting for our rights, which has been something that has been happening for some time in Malawi. So I think this is very good. A lot of the things that government was getting away with, by weaponizing feminism against feminists in Malawi is not going to happen anymore, because now we have the basis to say, no, you agreed on to this. You cannot fight against us now. So I think it's a very good thing.
Thank you, Jessica. And you mentioned 1995. So we all know that in 1995, Malawi was part of the countries that made some commitments and agreed to some things at the Beijing conference, and that has been very helpful in shaping the fight for gender equality in Malawi. So I just want us to quickly talk about what do we think has worked, building on from what you said about how the fact that Malawi has recognized feminist movement and leadership as key. We need to leverage on that, I feel, as young people, as feminists, as organizations. We need to leverage on this commitment to ensure that we actually bring change. So I want us to quickly look at what worked and what didn't work from 1995, from those agreements then, so that we then see what needs to happen now to make these commitments different. Because it would be sad to see a situation where we have these really good commitments that we're all like, yes, feminist movement and leadership, but because we don't introspect and see what went wrong that we can do different this time, we see that by 2026, nothing has actually changed despite a good commitment. So can we just, reflect a little bit what worked since 1995 to now, and what did not work that we would want to change to make these commitments actionable? So we could start with Zilani, and then Jessica, then Tadala.
I like the approach of the sisters that came before us, the sisters who attended the Beijing conference in 95 when I was still in high school. I like their approach. They were tenacious, they were in it for the long haul. And when we meet them today, or for me over the last few years, and getting to know them and understand, the journey that they've had in the gender equality movement, I feel that fire every time we have conversations, and every time I'm learning knowledge from them. And sometimes I think as younger feminists, we forget how much fire and passion they had at the same age that we had. Because what we see sometimes are women who maybe seem to be more engaged with attending meetings and negotiating a slower process of achieving what we need. Women who have slowed down to some degree, it seems, but that's not the case at all. There is a fire in them that is inextinguishable, and they began with the same fire we have. The impatience that is evident from the feminist movement now is because we have a bigger movement now in terms of what we seek as women, and the growth of, the thrust for it is huge now compared to that at that time. We have the media and social media and access to information that make this all possible to propel, a drive and a desire for change in a very visible way. However, in 1995, these women didn't have access to communication platforms that we did, and they managed to mobilize, organize, frustrate governments, and allow the leadership to talk with them and come up with these commitments. So in Malawi, what happened is that we've had since then a number of legislations that, have been passed. We can point to the Gender Equality Act. We can look at protection legislation for children. We look at Marriage, Family, Divorce Relations Act, and so forth and so on. All these come out of those commitments. Yes, it seems like ages after 95, it's been a slow process, it seems like, but it's a lot. And these commitments matter. These legislations matter. These protections matter. What hasn't worked so well is implementation. Malawi is fabulously famous for enacting wonderful policies and legislations and having a poor record of actual implementation on the ground. So what I believe needs to matter is a multi-pronged approach. Of course, first of all, we need a government that has the will. It is always going to come down to political will. As long as the leadership are dedicated to a plan of action on a certain situation, it will happen. Let's look at the SADC conference. Ain't the city pretty? The roads are wide, they're painted. I'm driving in the right lane nowadays, guys. The lights are up. It's like, is this my Lilongwe? This is the Lilongwe I want. So if we actually want, and in 2 minutes, it happened like, it's still happening right now. So if this government would want to give women an equal playing field, they want to give us justice where we deserve it, then it will happen. It's always about political will. But they will not do that willingly, right? Obviously. So, multi-pronged approach. We need to approach from different angles. We need the feminists of before to continue dialogue. We need the younger feminists to be vocal, visible, relentless, shout. Because if you do not yell and shout and show your frustration, they'll think you're all right, that everything's okay, and you accept it. You're taking it on your back. Don't do that.
I would like to just echo what she said. Malawi has achieved so much since 1995, but we're just not implementing it. And it really boils down to political will. And political will, I think for me, I'll focus on that political will is what determines who is going to be in public office and who's going to make decisions. Right now, the systems that are making decisions are so full of men. So full of men. And our representative, I am very sure I know, he's very well qualified for his position, but I also like to question that in Malawi, the people who are mostly affected by gender-based violence are women. Therefore, why is it a man who is leading that department? I would like to interrogate that. That is something that we have had to interrogate as a country, where the issues that women are facing in this country, the systems or the departments that are supposed to manage those issues are led by men. Why? That is one of the reasons why implementation is failing in this country. We've got all of these beautiful, beautiful policies that if you put a woman in charge of implementing that policy, a woman who has faced different forms of violence, a woman who on her way from home to work will face several forms of harassment, that woman is in a position to actually go back to parliament or to go back to say, you know what, these are issues that women are facing. We need to do something about this. That is not to say that we should not include men. I'm just saying women understand these issues. We are better equipped to actually do something about it. And the problem has been that the moment we say that it has to be women making those decisions, government has seen it as, you know, these women are coming in as being radical. No, we are simply saying we know these issues. We know what it feels like to not have access to something. So we need to be up there making those decisions. So I would say we have achieved a lot, but we have a long way to go. We have a very long way to go. And I think we need to keep a close eye on this commitment that Malawi has, that we can go on and say, you know what, we did something that actually worked this time.
Sorry. Okay, so we have a hand in the back. Okay, let me get the mic to Joseph.
Thank you, moderator, and all the panelists. Indeed, an interesting conversation and an important one that we need to continue. Maybe because of what my colleague said, I thought it would be important that I also say something. Yes, we need to make progress and radical decisions that have to be made. I just wanted to comment on yes, I'm leading the programs that are responding to gender-based violence. That is within the department. Now, the head of our department, the Department of Gender Affairs, which is the lead national gender machinery in Malawi, is a female. So our director is female. And under her, there are a few of us who are just her, like, you know, her soldiers. Like, so it's not like they are all men in the department. There are also females. And for now, you had indicated that you have some programs that are running in the communities. When you go in most of the districts, we have 28, we have officers, gender officers, in 26 of the 28 districts. A majority of them, over 40%, actually it's I think around 60% are female. So those that are leading gender equality interventions at the district level. So in terms of us as a Department of Gender Affairs, living up to the 40-60 representation, I believe it's been more than that in terms of representation of males and females. So it's just that I am leading one of the programs, but overall we have a lot of women, qualified women, not just women, a lot of qualified women that we are part of the department. But also commenting further in terms of the strides that we have made, yes, these are important strides that we need to celebrate, that the laws are there, we have some programs, we have some interventions, that now we can have these spaces that we talk about gender equality, feminism, and the like, but also from government. It is our impression that there's more that needs to be done. As much as everything else points to the government, but also ourselves as stakeholders, especially as civil society. I think we have a lot of work to do in building a strong movement. Because in places where things have worked, honestly, a strong movement is important. One of the challenges is that most of our efforts are so fragmented. For example, we are having this conversation here. To what extent is this conversation? How many are part of this conversation? You discover that before coming to this meeting, I passed through somewhere because I thought that's where the meeting was, and I called Shalom. I said, I'm in a wrong meeting, but they are discussing gender issues as well. When I was there, the people, they saw me, they said, are you coming for this meeting? Because they know I come from the Ministry of Gender. I said, no, I did not get an invitation to this meeting. And I don't know if there's a government representative, especially from our department. Now, most of these initiatives, most of our advocacy, for example, is not coordinated. If we are to reach the point, because one of the commitments that we have made as a government is for increased resource allocation towards the feminist movements, gender equality activities, and the like. The one who is responsible for allocating those resources is not Ministry of Gender. There is another authority within the government that even the Ministry of Gender has to lobby for entities that have been successful in lobbying for increased funding towards their programs. For example, talk about health. There's a strong movement. There's a lot of coordination of the civil society organizations that are working in the health sector talk about Mehin, talk about most of when the government budget is simply passed, just the following day you see an analysis has been made. How much have we done as civil society, for example, to do an analysis of the government budget when it is passed? You discover that we make noise, but to engage the movers and shakers in terms of those that can make decisions, I believe we still have a long way to do. So that can only happen if we have built this strong movement, and we also know where to shoot, who to target. Otherwise, all this talk, if it is not going and pointing to the right directions, the ones that are making decisions, it will remain talk, and no action. Thank you.
Can I just comment on his comment quickly? Joseph, I appreciate everything you said. Thank you for, giving this audience and everyone a rundown on the 60-40 representation of the Department of Gender in your specific department. However, I just wanted to point out one thing, because you talked about the fragmentation and the lack of cohesiveness of the movement. Fair enough. There's a lot of activity happening. There's, when you say a lot, it seems like a lot. There are efforts small, some a bit bigger, and, communicating or trying to work together maybe doesn't always happen as well as it could. That is true. And you are putting the onus on the movements, and you're talking about civil society having to take responsibility for its own lack of success towards achieving these goals. Wow. We exist in this gap, filling what government has failed to do. That is what civil society is for. Civil society exists, should be, for a short period of time to address challenges that government cannot do. We shouldn't be here forever. We're here because government has failed. It's people. Simple as that. So to turn back and to give us the blame for our own lack of success is quite, I think, counterintuitive and, not very positive, because we're doing our best. We need to always look back at those who have the actual power, which is yourselves in government, and fault government to say, why are you not supporting the movements better? Because I think the fault lies with you. Working with the ministry is not simple. There's so much bureaucracy. It takes very long to get responses for things. But building those relationships, and then there's changes because people have moved from position to position to build new relationships. It is not the simplest. I think anyone here who works for a gender organization, who is in this movement, will appreciate that working with the Ministry of Gender is very difficult.
Okay, so, sorry, is it up? We are going to have some time to really get into groups where we're going to discuss challenges. And I think these are things that would be good to come out in challenges, because I think that's what this is about. Let's hear the challenges from the different parties involved, the different stakeholders, to say, what are the challenges? If we feel that maybe the reason why it might be a challenge to attain this commitment is because of fragmentation issues, then let's highlight that so that we can then see what opportunities then exist and how do we move on from that. So I would like to suggest that we just park this for a little bit and then we'll get into it when we get into the group work. There was another question. Where's the mic? Yes.
Actually, I wanted to add more soup on the issue of lack of coordination. So since you have said that we can say it in our groups, then I think I'll say it there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, you will add that one to the groups. So coming back,
girl, I want to hear from you, because when you have a microphone, you better take that opportunity to amplify your voice. Please speak. Please, sis.
Okay, I wanted to say that as a movement, I think it's time that we start considering how we define social change to us. Because as it is, to me, I believe social change is not about creating or forming a new organization or movement, but maybe scaling up with existing organizations and individuals, and you have to identify the inequalities that are happening and what you want to change. But first of all, you have to find an individual or an organization that's sharing the same goals as you, and then you work towards that. Because the problem now, there are a lot of NGOs coming up, a lot of movements, but if you can see, the situation on ground is still the same. So you begin to wonder that what's really happening. So I'm thinking that maybe we should try to redefine what social change to me as a person. What do I want to change? So when we do that, maybe then we can start coordinating, but I'm not trying to stop people from forming organizations, but I think they're just a lot for now.
Thank you, Patience. All right, so as we move on with the dialogue, Zilani, earlier you mentioned how we would require a multi-pronged approach to ensuring that the commitments this time are actually actualized. And so I wanted to hear from you. My question to you is, how do we begin? Because again, today is about that intergenerational gap. And you mentioned earlier how we have, you know, the Emma Kalias, these Barbara Bandas, people who were present during the 1995 Beijing declarations and are still here today fighting for gender equality, a certain fire and zeal that's in them. How do we begin to leverage on that and connect it to young people to ensure that together we fight, and that there's not that, you know, oh, these are the Emakalias, the older people, and then these are the younger people. How do we begin to merge the two to advance gender equality? And then to Tadala and Jessica, I wanted to ask you, what spaces do you feel exist for young women, young feminist women, in being part of this gender equality discourse? Yeah, so we could start with Tadala and Jessica, and then we'll finish up with Zilani.
As far as spaces is concerned, I think maybe it's the problem, but I feel as if younger women have sort of started creating their own spaces. Young women are also collaborating. I think there is collaboration that's happening on the ground with people creating consortiums. So I think we are creating spaces, and within those spaces, sometimes we are also able to have consultative dialogues. And I think there are some dialogues that are happening with perhaps older feminists, but maybe they're not happening at a faster scale or at a bigger scale that maybe would help us move forward together.
I think for me, it's really about the spaces that are there being safe spaces for young women to come in. There are a lot of spaces where young women are supposedly invited to be, you know, to come in and to be a part of those spaces. But in a lot of the spaces, especially with bigger organizations that young women get invited to, we end up being in the corner somewhere, being tokenized, where we're given like the last 5 minutes in the entire meeting where we're like, oh, young women are here, let them speak. So I think, like Zilani said, it's about taking up the space. Go in those meetings and make your presence known. They need when you're leaving that meeting, they need to know that this person was here. Audrey was here and she said this and this and this and this. They need to remember you. And one of the things that has usually happened in a lot of these meetings is that that fire in young women is usually suppressed by all of these other bigger voices who are like, no, this is a respectful place. You know, you can't dress like that. You can't speak like that. No, go in there and speak. The more you are disruptive, the more they'll remember what you had to say. So a lot of these issues that young women are facing, I don't remember who said this, but it was in another meeting where one of the older feminists said the issues that young women are facing now are the same issues that older feminists faced when they were young. You know, they've been going on and on and on, and the older feminists were disruptive in their time, you know? So what's stopping us from being disruptive now? Go in those rooms, go in those spaces and make noise. When you're leaving, it doesn't matter who's there. It doesn't matter which minister is there. Go in there and make noise and make them remember you. And when you're done, don't stop by saying, I signed the papers, I attended this. Go back out there and make more noise about where you were. If there was something that came up in there that you disagreed with, if you did not have the space to share it in that meeting, use your social media platform to talk about that one issue. You know, go on social media, go on Twitter to say, I was in this meeting today. We're talking about these great things happened. However, this also happened in there. There was another meeting that I went to where we're talking about sexual violence and sexual harassment. And there were all these people largely men who gave so many speeches. I don't know why a lot of men were given that space to talk about sexual harassment, but immediately after, it was the same men who spoke about the sexual harassment, going against it, who then went to harass women after the meeting, you know? So in this space, go make noise and be the problem, be the one they'll talk about and say, that one is a problem. When you're invited to a meeting, someone should always be like, hey, that one comes in and makes noise. So, and just, I know we'll move past this, but I would just like to highlight that from your comment, our representative for Ministry of Gender, it did not address the question that I asked on why is it a man leading a department that is addressing violence against women. Thanks.
So can Zilani quickly comment, and then we'll hear your comment and then move on to the last question? Okay.
Did you say I should quickly comment? Oh, wow. Instructions. This is our space, this is our time, so we're going to speak. Okay. I'm going to take you back. At the time that Malawi was agitating for independence, that is one of the milestone periods of time we can say women were instrumental in changing this country. And we know that because we have lived among them, they've been part of our time. And now as we lose them, as we lose, my great-aunt Rose Chirambo, at least great-aunt Vera Chira is still alive. And I had the privilege of growing up in exile in Zambia with these women and with other women so strong and who were able to share those stories and make me feel always a part of these conversations and the possibility that I also can make changes. And so from a very young age, I became involved in civil government in middle school and so forth and so on. And understanding how important it is to be able to speak your mind, but also to be in a space where people accept and encourage you to speak your mind. Okay. So many people today will understand the journey of these women because they have books. They've written books. Okay. So those stories have been shared now, and more and more people are reading them. I hope some of you have, or if you have access or had access to, Vera Chiro, who's still with us, then you will be able to, hear her story from her directly. But the older feminists have yet to write. They have yet to share their stories. We need to give them platforms like this or others where they can tell their journey in depth, and we can appreciate that fire that they began with. It's difficult if we're not engaged in a full narrative together where we only come to meetings and we have a very short period of time in which to engage, and we come with fire. There comes Jessica, the troublemaker, the fire radical feminist, and they feel like they're not appreciated or respected perhaps. So I think we need to have different kinds of platforms. We need to hear the stories of older feminists. They need to hear the experiences of younger feminists. We need to document these experiences better. The documentation of the women's movement is very badly done in this country, and we need to change that. Thank you to Warner Collective and the Women's Museum of Zambia for the series that they have done that have included, women and leaders in Malawi's history. That's made a bit of a difference, but I think it really needs to be shared out a lot more. So that's important. I think what's also important is that young women, feminists, please look for mentors who are older. When you're about to get involved into organizations or opportunities where you also are going to share your thoughts, your opinions, your knowledge, talk to your mentors. How did you approach this? What is the best way to do this in your opinion? This is what I'm thinking. We need these kind of guidances. So when I say multi-pronged approach, these are some of the ways we can do this. Young women, feminists have access to digital platforms and forms of communication that the elders didn't have, and they still don't quite get to grasp with. And they need to understand this because they should be on them. I need Emma Kalia tweeting, God damn it. Don't you? Because when you have a conversation with her, it's mortal. Don't you think she should be tweeting? Okay, and I work with women in communities, around, soil degradation and understanding land rights. And so when I go into villages and into the districts and I speak with women, that is where I understand really, that's where the women's movement really is. Because when you have these women in these communities who are so strong and who are educating other women that they have rights, even though it's difficult for them to actually, actualize some of those because of the situations they're in, but they're very, very passionate and they want to do more. I know that getting you young feminists speaking to women at grassroots level and joining forces is where it's at, because that's where the first change happened in the 50s towards 1964, because the women we've spoken about went to different villages, different districts in the dead of night, walking past lions to go and tell them why independence is important and getting women to sign up to the parties. So we need to do that same approach. All women are the same. We need to be talking to each other, not defining our differences so much, but looking to where we have a shared and collective goal for change. And then we'll drop those barriers better. We'll be more inclusive. We're talking about inclusivity and diversity, but amongst ourselves, we're fighting each other. We're talking about intergenerational this and that. We're African women. We all sit at the same table. I saw a video the other day of the Rwandese soldiers pounding maize in the traditional mortars with the women in the village in Mozambique. And I remembered, my childhood and teens going to the village on holidays and pounding maize like that, and all the stories that were told, by the different women who'd come, different ages. I miss those village fires. I miss pounding maize, because those kind of opportunities allow women of different ages to sit together, me from town with village women. Because of the work I do, I can still do that, but most of you, I don't know if you've ever been to your village. So do you understand the struggle of women in the village? Guys, we need to move past the barriers and embrace each other way better than we do right now. That was not quick.
All right.
Just adding one more thing. I brought 3 teenagers with me today. And I did this on purpose. I brought these 3 extra young women because as much as I can, because of what was given to me when I was a young girl, I like to expose young women to spaces where they can understand what is happening in their world. And that gives them more confidence to express themselves. And when they came in to sit here, there were spaces everywhere. There was chair there, chair there. I was so proud to see the 2 girls come and sat right in front. Now that kind of confidence isn't bought. It's shared. So I think including as many people as you can on the journey, as many women younger than you, because you're talking about your peers, but are you bringing the ones up who are even younger than you?
All right, thank you so much, Zilani Tadala and Jessica. Very insightful conversation. So this sort of brings us to the end of the panel discussion. I think in the interest of time, we're supposed to move on to group work. But before that, I would like to take a couple of comments from the people that are here in person. So we'll start with Joseph and then go to Patience.
Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you so much for having me as well here. This, as I said, I'll repeat, this is a very important conversation. Yeah, I don't know where to start from, but to say that I would love as well that this conversation must not exclude men and boys. It is important that we wish to be part of this conversation. Getting back to the question that you asked, and maybe before I respond to that, I just want to agree with you on the point that you said to encourage young women seated in here to speak and to voice. I think sitting in the Ministry of Gender, lately the government has been implementing the government internship, and we've been engaging a number of interns, both males and females. The few that I've worked with, those that seem to be so confident and are up to the task have not struggled in getting a job after engaging with us. And I remember at least 2 young women who in each and every meeting that we take them to, they would speak. And after that meeting, a few organizations would come, who are you? And glad to say that they did not struggle. Actually, they left earlier just at the beginning of the government internship program. But that is because of their confidence, their ability to speak, not just speaking, making unnecessary noise, but substantive contributions. So that challenges you to know your stuff. You are coming to this meeting, know what is this meeting about? What contribution can you make that you can be remembered for, not just unnecessary noise? In terms of why am I leading the gender-based violence response in Malawi, I think that's more of a personal question. But I want to refer you to, I'm publishing an article, so just to agree with you, writing our own narrative, it is important as a country. So there's an article that I've done. I engaged most of the feminists or the gender equality activists, the reputable ones in the country that we know, and I'm publishing this article. The title is Opposed by Men and Rejected by Women, the Dilemma of Male Gender Equality Activists in Malawi. Now, I'm publishing this by the end of this month, and I'm starting this article with my own personal motivation. Why am I doing what I'm doing? So it'll be important if you can have a look at it. I think you'll be able to get why am I doing what I'm doing. But I think suffice to say that it's more or less like questioning my brother Wilson, why he's leading for equality. But I have the qualifications, I have the passion, the passion for what I'm doing. So it's really in my blood. And most of it, you get it from my article. I think as soon as it's out, I'll be able to share the links and so that people can also have a look. Just a contribution to this conversation that we are having. I think it is important that we don't just talk, but we write about it, having our own narrative as a country, because that is very rare, not much has been documented, and yet we are doing a lot as a country. Thank you.
Okay, I have to speak. I applaud your bravado. I really do, to plug your article as a male ally in the gender movement that you're writing about your journey as a male ally and the support that you've had from feminists in writing this article. That's very bold, I have to say, and I'm looking forward to reading that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. There's another comment from Patience here.
Actually, when I heard Joseph talking about noise, I'm like, wow, why are you reading my notes? But I'm still going to say it. I wanted to say that as young people, I think we don't like leading, and this lack of information is what sometimes excludes us from tables where decisions are being made. When you go there to make noise, it's always important that you go when you are well informed about the topic under discussion. You cannot say anything if you don't know what people are talking about, if you don't have the background information about that topic. So what happens is you come here and you're just waiting for the transport funds, the food, and then you go, even if you wanted to comment, if you don't know what's the topic or the workshop all about, there's nothing that you can say. So what I can say is go make noise, but the noise should be substantive and constructive. If I can ask you here that you are here in this meeting, we are talking, but you don't even know what NalaFEM is all about. If I can ask you, how many of you know the 7 demands that were made by African young feminists, Beijing Prize Manifesto? No one is going to say, maybe 2 or 3 people. And we are here talking about intergenerational dialogue, which NalaFEM is advocating for, but we don't have this information. So even if you come here, what are you going to say? Nothing. So let's lead, guys. Let's lead the available documents so that we can contribute and be noticed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there's another hand right next, and then we'll come to Gloria.
I'll try to be quick. I think I love the concept of male involvement because I think I begin to also speak on the issues of feminists. Just the word feminist, from my observation, is that a lot of guys will tell you, I don't do that kind of stuff. A male cannot be a feminist. But I think it goes back to the whole definition of feminist. What are we talking about? Because most of the times people think we're trying to diminish men or make them inferior. But by the end of the day, we're trying to raise women's voices and make sure that inequalities that are there that hinder women are removed. So I was just really impressed with in correlation and like men stepping ahead to work for issues of women. Yeah.
One last comment. Okay, the issues of feminism, I think it's actually important that we start to pointing out what we fight for against. We're fighting against patriarchy. If you can see patriarchy is even barren men, it's actually something that oppress men too. If you can see how men live their life, they were raised that they have to be superior, they have to be strong, they shouldn't be reporting things. Who said those things? Who said that? And the men are the ones suffering silence. If we can see at the statistics of those who have committed suicide, how many are women, how many are men? It's mostly men. Why? Because they don't say things that are happening to their life. And who told them not to say? Patriarchy. So it's important that we know that feminists, us as feminists, we are fighting about patriarchy, a very oppressive system which oppresses both men and women. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So Gloria, and then you.
Thank you. So mine is just a comment. I think building on what Patience, as well as I think it was Zilani who made a comment about like how are we also reaching out to the feminists coming below us. And when I heard the term intergenerational dialogue, my first thought was when I first started my journey like towards like feminism and defining myself as a feminist around like ages 12 to 15, I didn't have that access to information or access to Malawian feminists. I was building my feminist based on like, what I could find on like the internet. So like the likes of Chimamanda, Audre Lorde, Angela Davis. I didn't have like access to Malawian feminists. So I think it's really important that we also begin to express ourselves. We also begin to tell our stories and also reach out to the upcoming generations of feminists, because I guess in another 25 years or so, we'll be the likes of Zilani, so on and so forth. So in another 25 years, it'll be us as older feminists, and it'll be the younger ones. What are we leaving to them? And also, are we opening these spaces to them? Are we giving them information? So definitely, as a feminist, I think it's important that we really begin to also raise the younger generation, because that only serves to build the movement. And because even after we go, we're leaving this world for them. Thank you.
Okay, this has been such a great dialogue, you guys. Thank you for everybody who has contributed their opinions, and thank you for the presentation from the Minister of Gender. One thing that Zilani said about women working with women, women empowering women, and all that, I think that's great. I think this platform has been there for like 25 years, 1995, yeah? I was born in 1995. And honestly, I would expect so much change because 26 years is a long time. And I think one thing that kind of impedes our development, our movement, the development of our movement, is we focus a lot on explaining feminism to men. We focus a lot on trying to get them to come to our side, but we don't need men. We don't need men to understand feminism. We just need to be feminists, and we just need to educate other women so that they also become feminists. Because I feel like feminists are the strongest people in the world, mentally, socially. So I think we should stop trying to get allies. Allies are important, yes, that's great, but we don't have the energy, we don't have the time for that. I want to experience freedom in my lifetime. I don't want to be 80 and then be, oh man, I missed on so many opportunities, because that's what oppression is, oppressing my opportunities, oppressing my limits, like oppressing me. I want to achieve greatness, and I don't want to be oppressed forever, in so many of the different ways that happens. And I would like that for all Malawi and African women everywhere, right? And one thing I wanted to ask the Minister of Gender, sorry to put you on the spot again. You talked about, one of the things that was mentioned was that the government is concerned about is autonomy, but it's been 25 years and women don't have safe abortions. That's the craziest thing, because if you care about women, women are dying. Women are dying from unsafe abortions. So what is being done? what has been done in the past 25 years on body autonomy, because nobody has to agree with my decision for me to make a decision. You know, their opinion is their opinion, and that's their business. So I want to know what the Ministry of Gender is thinking about on that, just that point, because it feels like you don't even recognize that women are smart enough, capable enough to make their own decision, you know, and that's very insane to me. Yeah, so I'd like a comment on that. So we'll hear from Toko, and then maybe Joseph, you can take this one on.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say every woman belongs to these spaces, and while theory is important and it's very important that we're informed about all these things, but we cannot exclude women who don't know about all these things, because we all have these experiences, we all go through violence, abuse, and all these issues. So every woman should be welcome into these spaces, and we can't say because this woman doesn't have vast knowledge on such and such an issue, then maybe she's not as radical as other women, and she should not be able to speak at such a space because she still has all these experiences. And so if we focus on only theory, then we're excluding a lot of women, and I think that would be very wrong. So there's that. And I also wanted to add that while men experience these disbenefits of the patriarchy, they also experience a lot of benefits. And they know very well the disbenefits that they experience and all these disadvantages that come in. But they choose to sustain the patriarchy because the benefits of it outweigh the disbenefits for them. So I think we need to mention that when we're talking about all these issues, or men are depressed, or men are committing suicide because of the patriarchy, we also need to mention that they are choosing to sustain this system. And so that's something we need to talk about as well. Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, sure. And then we'll hear from Joseph.
Thank you so much. I wanted to speak earlier, but everybody has so much to say, which is great. To add on to what she just said, ndimafuna ndingoni nako kuti kumalawi kunoku in the feminist movement tilindika chisimo komati this one is too feminist. Maybe I'm not too feminist. That's what brings the gap, you know? She's saying we can't exclude those that haven't read or that are not knowledgeable. That's true. Because here, like in our space, I think we go to so many meetings and we see each other all the time. Where are the other ones? The little ones, where are they? We're not doing enough. Can we make our spaces more welcoming? Can we be kind? Can we be gentle? Can we nurture, you know? Because yes, we're radical, we're brave, we're loud. But what about these other ones that don't know? We should also just put them under. But yes, great point. Thank you.
Yes, to the department, to the gender. I think if I was working, because I'm with YFN, and one of the things that we try to do is educate women, right? And if I was trying to educate women everywhere in the country, I think I would involve the Ministry of Education more. I would try to get this curriculum and syllabuses to have the content that we talk about here, right? Because you want it to be at the lowest, like for the most basic person who goes into class, you want them to know that, right? So even like primary schools, secondary schools. So I also would like to know how well, or do you work with the Ministry of Education? What are you guys doing? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So I think this would be our last comment because we do have another activity to move on to and our time is not looking too good. So I don't know how you manage this, Gloria. We'll have to fast track a couple of things in the interest of time, but We'll hear from Joseph. He'll respond to your questions, and then we'll move on to the next part of today.
Thank you very much for those questions and all the comments. There's quite a number of things that we are doing as a country. First of all, issue of unsafe abortion. We recognize indeed, not we, but it has been recognized indeed that unsafe abortion is taking away lives of so many young women and women, causing a lot of injuries and so much happening. Now, it has gone to Parliament several times, the bill, because now there's a bill that in the previous sitting of Parliament was supposed to be passed so that it becomes an act, and then the president can, after the president has assented to it. But those are the challenges that every time it's taken to the Parliament, it's usually brought back. It's because of the same issues that we're talking about, maybe our attitudes, our beliefs. So this is mainly for those that are representing us in Parliament, our MPs. It went through a process of consultation with chiefs and others. So it's not really for the Ministry of Gender alone, but it is for those that are responsible for making decisions at various points to decide what needs to be done. Because the ministry has, we have provided platforms where we engage with different stakeholders, honest conversations, chiefs have been engaged, religious leaders have been engaged. But this goes back to, of course, it's not just for Ministry of Gender alone, because Ministry of Health is also in there. So honestly, there's no one clear-cut response from me or from the ministry, but we need to appreciate the fact that as we are producing our CEDAW reports, in almost each and every CEDAW report, this issue of unsafe abortion comes. And it comes so because as government, at the point of ratifying the CEDAW, if we had made a reservation that issues of unsafe abortion should not be talked about, we would not be having this conversation. But this conversation is coming up because in most of our ratification to the international instruments, we made a commitment that this is one of the issues that we need to deal with. So that gives us a good starting point to further engage those that can make decisions, the chiefs, the religious leaders and the like, because those are the ones that are going to come out to say, no, we don't want this. So I would say that it's a lot of work that needs to be done for all of us. And then it goes back to the issue of working with not just Ministry of Education. We have Ministry of Civic Education now to continue raising awareness to the general public, but also the curriculum, engendering the curriculum. Those efforts are being done. Lately, you may also appreciate that we have been working with Malawi Police, for example, to engender the training curriculum for Malawi Police Service. That now the training used to be six months. Now it will be for almost 12 months because we have included gender issues in there, so that as they're graduating, they are finishing their training, they are already grounded on gender issues from my police service. So in terms of Ministry of Education, we are working with Ministry of Education, and Ministry of Education is one of our greatest stakeholders. But sometimes change is gradual. We are sure that we'll be getting there with small milestones that we are achieving. We need to celebrate the little successes, but also reflecting on what best we can do to make sure that we achieve what we want to achieve. So more work needs to be done, really. In terms of patriarchy, the patriarchal dividend, which is the benefits that men talked about, I think most of this really is more or less like speaking to what I was sharing, because what I used in my article is we know about Cornell, how she has written about masculinities, the patriarchal dividend and the like, and how men benefit in different ways. So I think let's write about these things. That's what I would say, because this is very, very good and very progressive. And I need to appreciate as well, because I have the mic on behalf of the ministry, for inviting us. Thank you for equality, and thank you for everyone. Our wonderful panelists. As said, it's my first time to join this conversation, and I would love that I become part of it because of what I do as well, because of the different platforms that we have in which I engage with different young women, and for the kind of programming that I do. I believe for me, this is an important space as well. So thank you so much, and thank you so much, everyone. Let's keep up this conversation, and let's take it down to where it is needed most, to the primary schools, secondary schools, to the universities, to the communities, and everywhere. I think that way we'll make very good progress. And thank you so much, moderator, and everyone.
Okay, so we'll now be moving on to the next segment of today's program. My name is Gloria Dzinjirimodzi. I'm part of the Young Feminist Network as well as Student Development Studies. But before we begin officially, I'd like to thank our panelists, Jessica, Dadala, and Zilani. Your conversation is very, very, very engaging, and I'm so pleased as well as honored to be a part of a space where you guys get to speak. So feel free to take your seats because the next activity is a group activity. Okay, so now the next activity is a group activity, and now we begin to interact as well as develop tangible, as well as try to develop tangible actions in order to advance equality. So the task today is, you're first of all in two groups. So the demarcation is this tree right here. I think it's a tree. So the first group, this side, and the second group, this side. And please arrange yourselves after, when I tell you to begin, please arrange yourselves in such a way that you can interact fully, as well as participate, as well as give a space for everyone to participate. So the task for today is looking at the opportunities and challenges for advancing movement building for gender equality in Malawi. Looking at the opportunities and challenges for advancing movement building for gender equality in Malawi. And based on the opportunities and challenges that your group comes up with, please also develop action plans. So what tangible action plans, along with time frames, can be developed in order to address these, in order to harness these opportunities, as well as address these challenges. So that's entirely up to you. And of course, like, it's a very exciting time considering that Malawi is supposed to be committed to promoting feminist movements. So yeah, definitely, you can disperse into your groups. We will have 10 minutes, I'll let you know. But yes, we're really crunched in time.
So because of time, they can combine now the solutions.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Let's combine the
Okay. Looking at some of the opportunities and challenges for feminist movement building and how we can address them. So of course, we also need to take notes. So I guess perhaps we can maybe go in a circle in order to give everyone a chance to speak.
So we look at challenges first, or opportunities, or just both?
I think we should start with one.
Start with
This is a SWOT analysis.
Yeah.
SWOT.
Opportunities and challenges for them.
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and challenges for gender what? For advancing movement building in Malawi. So particularly feminist movement building.
would it be useful to look at the challenge and then find opportunities to address that challenge? So, provide solutions, not just talking about the problem.
As well as on top of that, we also need to develop the action plans.
In 10 minutes? All right, we'll keep it simple. Let's identify 3. How about that? 3 challenges. Or we can identify several, but stick to 3. Provide opportunities for those 3. And some simple 2 or 3 steps how to action those. Does that work? Yes. That was my contribution.
Are you moving? Oh no, it's my contribution. Okay. So we're going in circles, right? So we should start from that side, I think.
Why are we starting from here?
I think we should start with our young members.
Yeah.
Yes. What if we don't really know what to say?
You should. Get things right.
I think someone else should go first, particularly.
As a girl, as a young woman, what do you perceive to be a challenge to you attaining your goals because you're a girl?
Or what do you perceive are the challenges in order, what do you perceive are the challenges for you being part of a movement? So we're looking at movements in particular, because Malawi is committed to, apparently committed to, building feminist movements.
I think for me, I can't think of a physical challenge, but more like a mental. Sometimes when you think, okay, today I'm going to get up and I'm going to make a change and I'm going to do all this and that, and then sometimes you get
So what are the
friends around you,
opportunities
so
that are
guys
there
like
for
my friends,
movement
and then
building?
they'll sort of
I think the first of
encourage me,
biggest
feel like, oh,
opportunities
just
that
go, what
Malawi
are you
has
going to do
stifled
about it, blah, blah,
that
blah,
actually
blah, and
feminist
stuff like that,
building
or they'll kind of just
feminist movements
reiterate
and
what the
leadership
rest of the
action
world says
coalition.
and be like,
I think that creates a lot of room
feminism
for
isn't going to change the world
accountability,
anytime soon, so you
which
should
is
just
the
give
most
up,
important when
blah,
it
blah,
comes
blah,
to
blah, stuff like that.
implementing anything women's rights related in Malawi. So I think that's the biggest opportunity.
So you have an opportunity much to acknowledge.
Yeah, they have to acknowledge. So if they fail again, then we have the room to globally hold the Malawian government accountable.
We're fighting for equality when it comes to jobs.
So is that also another opportunity, I guess? The ability that will be able to hold them accountable on a global level.
I think so.
A lot of rules, maybe when they were younger, had goals. Like, I want to do this, I want to become this. But as they got older, they were less motivated, and they felt like they had to do that role of maybe becoming a housewife, for example. And some of them started giving up towards the end. So they're like, what's the point? I'm just going to be married and it also does affect you when you see your friends actually get married off, because then you think, what's going to happen to me? Is that the only option I have? Also seeing boys and girls being treated differently. For example,
where we are currently,
if my skirt was at my knee, I may be yelled at, put in a come together. But if a boy was to come in with a scruffled collar, or just even a button shirt, it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, all these things. Okay, great. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Yeah.
There is corruption, the patriarchy, the colonization of the funding ecosystem, where there are a lot of limitations when it comes to small organizations even getting funding. Language, for instance, the commitments currently are only in English, and this leaves out a large population. Cultural norms and religion, as you can see with issues of, for example, the GOP bill, that's another challenge. And lastly, the lack of political will. How many minutes do I have? Okay, so the action plan, we thought we could fund community radios as they will help spotlight grassroots initiatives. We could mobilize traditional leaders, as I stated with the opportunity. We could also lobby for the vacant positions for women to occupy the spaces, to document. So we're going to amplify documentation and also have lobby for the funding for more documentation. There is also, we hope we can re-amplify the Women's Manifesto and use it in government's policies. And we hope we can all help in the popularization of the Generation Equality Forum, and here especially emphasizing the inclusion of non-binary people and also members of the LGBT community. We hope to also have an audience with the president. That way we can have him read out the commitments and even give us a real life commitment, I guess, to all the under the action coalitions that Malawi has signed under. And lastly, we would like government to make the documents, for example, like the commitments, or even other manifestos more youth-friendly, or in our words, more sexy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dadala, for your presentation. So I will shortly also present my group's work. So our challenges are resistance, and also that young feminists are only engaging later in life. Larger participation in the feminist movement, being sexualized and how we're socialized from an early age, as well as a lack of support and funding, as well as men in these spaces are also the ones harassing us after the meetings. So definitely that. As well as misinformation on feminism, as well as lack of information, especially towards younger feminists, as well as perhaps leaving people behind in the spaces that we occupy. I mean, for example, here we are. Who's here? Is there anyone from, I guess, a local, rural, or grassroots level present? As well as coordination. So the feminist movement can sometimes seem fragmented, as well as, everyone's doing their own thing. You have a feminist movement, a feminist group here, a feminist group there, but they're not necessarily coordinated together. As well as perhaps all the feminists are not accessible to younger feminists, so there's no intergenerational connection as well as dialogue. As well as culture and religion. So there are two opportunities that we identified were that these organizations and spaces exist. So we have Pepeta Africa, the Malawian Association of Feminists, spaces like the Young Feminist Network, as well as UN Women, who are working towards, and the Ministry of Gender, who are working towards advancing gender equality. So these spaces exist. As well as there's enthusiasm for gender equality. So like now we can actually talk about gender equality, something that wasn't possible before 25 years ago. Another opportunity is that we're living in a digital age, so information is more accessible. People have more access to radio as well as internet, so information is easily accessible. So the actions that we drew up were using media to disseminate information as well as increase the visibility of the feminist movement. As well as on top of that, start documenting feminist stories. So using the opportunity that we have with current, all the feminists, as well as us as current feminists, in order to bring up the generations that we have coming after us. So documenting our stories, giving access to our stories, that there are feminists in Malawi, we exist and we're working. So that the feminists coming behind us have an opportunity to, I guess, build on that. As well as 3, we need to interrogate religion in the cultural space as well as disrupt these spaces. And also action number 4 is embedding feminism into education. So because Malawi has signed on towards building feminist movement, it now needs to walk its talk and actually start educating its people through its curriculum. So that's all I had. Sorry, we're pressed for time. I will now hand over to Shalom, who will close. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gloria, for leading this very important activity because, like we said in the beginning, it's more than just talking. For so long, we've done a lot of talking and deliberating, but it's about how do we move on from there? What does it mean? What do these commitments mean for us as young women, as young feminists, and how are we going to implement, and what does that implementation look like? So I think it's very important. And like was mentioned earlier, these commitments being actualized is not falling on one group alone, but like Zilani said, it requires a multi-pronged approach. So as young feminist leaders, what are we going to do about it? As government, what are they going to do about it? As civil society, what's going to be done about these commitments? The onus is really on all of us. And I think this has been a very fruitful discussion, lots of great insights, and I've really enjoyed it. And I hope those joining in have enjoyed it as well, and that we're all inspired in one way or the other to go ahead and make some changes and hold people accountable to these commitments that were made. But it also starts with you. How are you being accountable to these commitments as a Malawian, as an African, as a feminist? So with that said, I would just like to say this brings us to the end of today's She Talks Intergenerational Dialogue that has been supported by the Nala Feminist Collective. Really happy for the support that they've given to us, and really happy that we got to have this a safe space once again. So with that said, I would like to say thank you so much to everyone who made it today. Thank you to everyone who joined in online. Thank you to everyone who tweeted. Thank you to everyone who followed the conversation on our Facebook page. Until next time. And so before we leave, we do have a banner set up just outside in the car park. So we're going to go and take a group picture. So if we can just make our way there. But other than that, thank you so much to everyone. Goodbye.